Hey watch friends, today we're going to check out the inaugural offering for a new microbrand. This is from Pedral and this is their Artefact. For those who are involved in the microbrand scene, you might have seen this one in the past. They've actually had it in development for about 3 years and done something like 40 prototypes, so you'll see more on the Kickstarter campaign. This is going to be launching on Kickstarter on April 13th of 2024, so very shortly after publishing. But we'll have full details and I'll of course have a link down the video description. This one itself is a prototype, so there are some finalized production version updates that we'll talk about as we go throughout. So with that, let's go ahead and just dive straight into this and get a feel for this model, what it's like to live with, all that kind of good stuff. First, for warranty, this comes standard with a 1-year warranty. However, as part of the Kickstarter campaign, they do actually have as a stretch goal the potential to raise that to 3 years. The case on this, measured from roughly the 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock position, is coming in at 39.5 millimeters. Because this has a little bit of an unusual shape, I went ahead and measured from 2 to 8 as well, and that's coming in at 40.5 millimeters. The bezel, again, with an atypical shape at the roughly 3 to 9 position, is coming in at 37.2 millimeters, so a decent step down. The lugs, since this is an integrated bracelet, I measured on the outside of the end link here, or on the first link rather, and that's coming in at 22 millimeters. The lug to lug is a nice wrist versatile 47.5 millimeters, which with the Fimo end links in integrated bracelet, I think it wears a little bit shorter. The thickness, including this sapphire crystal, is coming in at 11.4 millimeters. The crystal itself is a flat sapphire crystal, and it does have, I believe, 3 layers of inner AR coating. The movement is beating away with a Miyota 9039. For those who aren't familiar with it, automatic, higher beat, hacking, hand winding around a 42-hour power reserve, basically the same thing as a 9015, except it's the no-date version. The water resistance is sufficient for a sporty style watch in my opinion, and that's coming in at 100 meters or 10 atmospheres. The weight is right in the middleweight category, I'd say on the lighter side of a middleweight. It's coming in size to my 6.5 inch wrist on this bracelet at 132.2 grams, so not too bad there at all. So now that we have the basic specs out of the way, let's get a better feel for what this is actually like to live with, and then we'll wrap things up with the overall positives, negatives, and critique, or in summary rather. So for the colors, there are a slew of color options that are available. Obviously there's the red version we're looking at today, but then there's additionally a blue, a gold, an orange, and a venturine, a silver, as well as several other ones that are going to be standard, 8 in total. But there's actually 3 different ones, or 6 actually, 2 sets of 3, for a total of 14 that are available with stretch goals as well. So huge amount of options available. For this particular variant, one of the things you're going to immediately notice beyond the bold coloration, which is a nice kind of deep burgundy, sometimes reddish color, it really shifts pretty well across lighting as we'll see here. But one of the main things you're going to notice is it does have that nice inlay in the middle. That inlay pattern is kind of like a guilloche pattern there, and it's very nicely done. At the 12 o'clock position, you can see that they do have their brand name, and that is applied. With the depth for this, you can see that they have not only that inlaid, but then you step up to that outer with the perimeter there. And that perimeter has a nice satiny kind of finish to that. It really plays with the light nicely, and I like the way that that contrasts against that guilloche pattern in the middle. So that's nicely done. As you move out further to the edge, you can see that they have a pronounced railroad track that's printed on the exterior. You can see that it does have numerals at the 5-minute increments as well. So I think that's a good look. It gives you clean legibility, and especially for this atypical shape, that's nice to see here. And I think, as we'll see, the handset I think is pretty much spot on for this as best as you can have it, though of course you'll see the variation on how it touches the railroad track as it moves around the dial because of that shape. As far as the handset itself, this is a polished handset. The overall style for this, first off, it is faceted, so you'll see light play as you move around. I would describe these as being a pencil style, however they are modified in that you can see out on the tips, they do have skeletonized, kind of like cathedral accents for that as well. The second hand is more of a traditional arrow tipped, so that's not like a lollipop style, that is actually the arrow out on the end, and then a very subtle counterbalance for that. As far as the markers themselves, these are all going to be applied. You can notice at the 12, 3, 6, and 9, you can see the 12, 3, 6, and 9 with the numerals there. And then in between those, you're going to have a pretty traditional polished style baton that is applied as well. All of these are going to feature lume, and we'll talk about that, or we'll revisit this. As it is on this prototype version, I think it's plenty sufficient for the dress sport style watch. It plays pretty strongly, and I really can't complain about that, with the exception of the coloration that we'll come back to, because they are going to make some updates there. Shifting over to the bezel. The bezel in this, as we already saw, is a fixed construction. It is going to carry through with the somewhat atypical shape of the overall case that carries through to the bezel itself. As far as the application, you can see it is fixed, set back, and then it has a nice textural difference here where you can see you have polished accents, as well as once you get to the face, you can see that this does have a vertical brushing, and that gives nice light play there as well. As far as the case itself, and this is of course inclusive of that bezel as well as the bracelet, this is all actually coated with a hardened coating, so that takes this up to 800 Vickers of scratch resistant. It is 316L stainless steel as the base material, though underneath of that, but that's an excellent improvement to help this stay looking new longer, which is always welcome in my book. As far as the actual case construction, you can see that this has a nice thin mid case, and I think it has a good flow to it. You can see, of course, the downturn lugs. Those do come slightly proud of the case back there, but they have a nice, again, textural mix where you can see a horizontal brushing running from the front to rear of that, and that's cleanly applied. And then you do have polishing up at the top, and that flows nicely down there, and then on the underside as well. Shifting around to the lugs, you can see again with being an integrated style, it has a pretty traditional lug look as far as with a flat lug cut in there with that female end link. However, as you can see, it's going to be much more narrow as far as for strap change ability there. So this is going to be a true integrated bracelet, which we'll come back to towards the end. On the 3 o'clock side, you can see this does have a sort of integrated crown guard. It's really just kind of the nature of that case flow on how that kind of tucks in around the crown itself. As far as the crown is coming in at 6.3 millimeters. So it sounds like it's on the smaller side. However, if you look visually, I think it's very proportionate, and it's not hard to grab a hold of or anything like that, with the exception of actually catching, and we'll come back to that as well. The crown, as you'd expect for a sports style watch, it is going to be push-pull for this. And you can see here, it does have a traditional coin edge. On the exterior, you can see that this is polished. So again, kind of plays in and being up against that brushing, I think that's a nice complementary accent there. And then you can see that they do have their signature on the exterior. Shifting over to the Caseback, this is one of the big areas where you're going to see a lot of change from the one that we're looking at today, but we'll make the best that we can with what we have available here. The construction is going to be the same in that it is a screw-in Caseback, and that's part of, I'm sure, how they achieve the 100 meters of water resistance. The finish on this is going to be similar to the rest of the watch, which is polished on the exterior, and then you have circular brushing going around. This one has unique text that you're compared to what you're going to see on the finalized version. But the biggest area where you're going to notice a difference is this exhibition window is going to look completely different. Here we have a clear sapphire crystal. That's actually going to be changed over to a black smoke sapphire crystal. And then the biggest difference is that rotor. So first off, you have the Geneva striping on the movement itself. The rotor on this is a pretty standard looking generic 9019 or 9039 rather, in this case, rotor. However, they are going to have on the production version, that's going to be a skeletonized, which is a really cool accent there. So I'm glad they decided to upgrade that. I think that that's going to look very, very nice in the final form. As far as the bracelet, this is of course a critical area since this is an integrated bracelet watch. The bracelet, as we already talked about, is roughly 22 millimeters at the top of the end link. That does taper pretty significantly on my calipers. At this butterfly clasp, I'm coming in at 17.8 millimeters. As we already looked at, the first link is a female end link there, or a female link, so that gives pretty good articulation that we'll look at here momentarily. The basic construction is going to be a fairly traditional 3-link design. Again, the finishing is going to be consistent with the rest of the watch, so you have brushing running the length of it, so that is going to be a linear brushing there, and then on the exterior, you do have nice polished chamfers as well. As far as the retention, this is held in with pins. So for those who don't have one, I'll of course have a toolkit linked down in the video description. Do encourage you to pick one up so you can do this yourself. The nice thing about pins, a little harder to adjust up front, but then you don't have to worry about screws backing out. As far as the articulation, I think the articulation on this is pretty good for what it is. You know, it has relatively short links, good chamfering on the interior, so you don't really have any hot spots or anything like that. Good drape overall. It doesn't really fold too flat to the case back by any means because of the way that link goes. However, the articulation, I think, is plenty respectable for that. So it has plenty of drop, so you really don't have the impact that you would with a male end link. As far as the clasp, on this particular version, you can see that this does have a butterfly clasp. It's going to be a traditional construction there, so you're going to have your double pushers, then you have a milled interior for that. Pretty basic design and straightforward. On the one that I received and that we're looking at today, it does not have half links. However, on the production version, they will be including half links. Additionally, though, as one of the stretch goals, they are actually having the option, or will include an additional toeless micro adjust clasp. So for those who don't like butterfly clasps, you will have the option of a toeless micro adjust clasp. They possibly will be losing the half links in favor of the toeless micro adjust clasp. I'm hoping they keep that though and offer. So for those who like the butterfly clasp, you'll be able to have the half link adjustment as well as the option of the toeless micro adjust if that's what you prefer. The picture on their Kickstarter campaign that I saw does not have the toeless micro adjust. However, that is how it's listed, so I believe that that's just a render for now. All right, so now you should hopefully have a better feel for the watch. Let's go ahead and bring in some comps to get an idea as far as how this stacks up size-wise. So first, we have it next to a similar Henta style, which this is a Dorenzo Mondial. This is their DRZ04. You can see 40 millimeters, definitely with a traditional round shape. You can see it has a lot more visual presence and size to that, really actually on the case, as well as especially the dial. And then of course, white, I think always wears or reads a little larger. Sticking with a lighter color, this is the Wise. This is their Adamascus series, the AD773. We've checked out both of those before, but you can see this one's coming in at 39 millimeters. So this gives you an idea of a traditional round as far as how this stacks up. And in that sense, again, I think the dial looks a little bit smaller, but I think it still has plenty of presence, as we'll talk about. And then here it is bringing it next to a smaller one. Again, this is a Zelos Nova, and this is a 38 millimeter. However, with that round shape, that traditional round shape, you can see again, it does have a little more visual presence to that, but it just gives an idea as far as how it stacks up. So now you should hopefully have a pretty good idea of the sizing. Let's go ahead and wrap things up though with my personal view of the positives, some critiques, as well as the summary. First, for the positives, we haven't yet talked about the pricing. This thing starts at $320 roughly, that's converted to US dollars, at launch for the aventurine version. That is exclusive to that aventurine version, and that's, I believe, only for the first 48 hours. But even after that, or even if you want one of the other colorways, it's still only approximately $365 for the next tier. Both of those for what you're getting for a 9039 and Miyota 9 series movement, hardened coating, the nice integrated original design, lots of color options available. I think you're getting a screaming good deal at even the $365 or even pushing it up to the $400 territory. You get a lot of specs for the money. Like the fact that this is an original design, it clearly has that kind of Henta inspiration, so it is familiar in many respects, but you can really tell that this has not just the shape itself, the little elements throughout, it really does have the originality to it, and I appreciate that. As far as the selection, I've never seen such a huge selection of options available. 14 in a singular launch if they unlock all of the stretch goals. That's just really staggering, but even the initial 8 that they're featuring, there should be something for everybody. If you like the style or look of the watch, you're certainly going to be able to find a dial that appeals to you. In terms of comfort, as well as sizing, both of these really go hand in hand. I think the sizing is pretty well spot on for what you're getting. On my 6.5-inch wrist, I think it fits just fine. I don't think you could get away with a whole lot smaller than my wrist because it does come out fairly far with that 47.5 millimeter lug to lug, but it really, I think, is pretty well sized perfectly to fit a 6.5-inch wrist. However, I still think it has plenty of presence that is going to wear just fine on most larger wrists as well, especially considering the fact that this does lean a little to that dressier styling. So in that sense, I think it's very versatile. But in terms of comfort, as we already talked about the articulation, the relatively lightweight, the relatively thin form factor, the nice chamfering of the bracelet, across the board, I think they've dialed this in well, and I think most people would be happy with this. As far as some critiques though, there's several things that I want to bring up, but they're all minor items. The first is something they intend to address. That is the lume coloration. I said we'd revisit this. As you can see on this prototype, there is a noticeable color difference between the hands as well as the markers. They're going to be standardizing that on the production version. It's going to be BGW9 on all of the versions, and I think that is a great choice. I would love to see that more white coloration all the way around. I'm not a huge fan of the way that kind of somewhat greenish tinge of like the C3 color shows up against this red, and I think the same is true for many other colors, so I think that's the right call. The styling, certainly this is an unconventional design, and as a result, you're probably either going to love it or hate it, or it might grow on you even if you're not sure about it initially. I think it has enough familiar elements, and I don't think it's too quirky or too out there. I think most people would be happy enough with this, but I understand initially it can look a little unusual with kind of that like distorted, melded effect there, but I think it would definitely grow on you. Crown access, I said we would talk about this. This is one of those things. The crown itself is not hard to grab a hold of. It's a little bit tough to grab from underneath. You can see I can get my fingernail in there. It does have a little bit of a recess cut, but that's something. It's definitely not the easiest to just grip. You do really have to get your fingernail underneath. So that's something, like I said, a minor item, but something worth mentioning. And then finally, just the nature of the fact that this is a true integrated bracelet watch, you're really going to be limited. So if you're not a bracelet person, unfortunately, this one's not going to be for you. If you do like bracelets, I think you'll be happy with this one. I think it's well incorporated. I think it fits nicely. And overall, I think it fits the design. So I personally, this is the way I would want it anyways. So it's not really a critique or a big deal there, but it's just something by the nature of an integrated bracelet watch that you should be aware of. So where does that leave us? Ultimately for me, I've got to say, I applaud the courage that they had to take the somewhat familiar or the traditional Henta design and really make it their own. They gave it a twist here, kind of distorted it, but I think they did so in a way that really works. Additionally, with the different dial versions that they have, I think they've got a lot of really attractive options between that meteorite as well as one of the aventurine, as well as the stretch goals of having that raw malachite dial, as well as there's a really cool looking blacked out version that has gilt accents. There's really something I think that's going to appeal for everybody, and I think they've done a good job overall. So for an initial offering, I think this is quite impressive. You can definitely tell they put a lot of time and thought into making this one come together. So there you have it. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you did like it, tap that like button. If you haven't already done so, give that subscribe button a smash and drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you like the design of all the color options that are out there? Which one's your favorite? Let me know. I look forward to discussing further. Thanks for watching.